All right.
Injuries, right?
Yep. So part 2 of my special guest Mauser. So, and if you look at that's a wide lens, so you're really out angling me on this. So, for you guys that don't know, Mauser is 6'5",
6'5",
6'5",
70.
370. You can do pull ups. I remember I've had a lot of people ask me that. I was like, yeah, I've witnessed it. So, I think that's interesting about you too. Like, I don't want to get into the GPP stuff, but you jump rope and you do carries and you will run, and like your best video on Instagram is you running on the sidewalk with the WEC shakers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I was teaching people that the other day for running, and it was hard for them to grasp it without the shakers. But
You mean the what does he call that? The pump thing?
yeah,
Yeah. I think that's important, but I think the more important, I don't want to get into all that, but the more important thing is the head over foot. And I have a really good analogy for that if you ever want to use it. Because a lot of people, he always talks about this, people try to run with their head centered and their body not moving. But there are 3 things that make you move when you're running. The 3 most important things to running. Number 1 is force production. So that's not necessarily how strong your leg is, but it's how strong your leg can be in the shortest amount of time. And then it's cycle rate, how fast you can, how many beats of the ground you can get in the shortest amount of time. And then it's stride length. People are always like, oh, he's tall, he runs fast. But that's actually the 3rd most important trait. Now, if you look at force production being the 1st most important trait, and you think about David Weck's head over foot, if you do a pistol squat, right, where's your head?
it's over your foot,
You can't do it in the center.
right?
Well, because that you don't have the balance or the strength there to do it, right? So it only makes sense to put your head over your foot. If force production is important, you need to be in that one-legged pistol squat type position in order to run. So I don't know how it took people this long to figure that out, but
I think they're still trying to. Part 2, I wanted Mauser to discuss injury prevention and just really trying to understand what pain actually is and knowing when it's actually an injury versus, I don't know what the proper term is, but like the best example I have is the SI joint dysfunction. And you guys have been here long enough, and you've seen me go through this enough times, but basically what happens is your SI joint is like, it's like a little sliver, and it's not really like a strong joint. So what tends to happen is sometimes it slips real quick and it goes back into place, but your body freaks out and it wants to protect your organs, and so it sends inflammation to that area. And most people want to take time off. My recommendation is always go walk and then do some body weight good mornings and body weight air squats. Try to move through with a pain of like 3 or less. And then the next day, maybe try to add a little bit of load to it. Because, I usually do that like once a year at this point, and it's the same. I know it's going to suck for like 3 days, but you go through the motions, and then you can be back to normal within 3 days. So you were the first person to teach me this, that like, hey, actually don't. Again, I want to discuss how to know when it's actually an injury versus you just need to kind of move through it and it's your brain telling your body to protect itself. But you were the first person to teach me that not everything is an injury. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Well, how to tell can be tricky. And I'm not a doctor or a physical therapist.
Yeah, I'm not either. I think we should make that clear. Talk to your doctor before taking our advice.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you, this isn't even advice. This is my experiences and what I think. And you can take it for what it is, or you can ignore me. That's fine too. It is difficult to determine what is an injury and what is just a pain or a tweak or whatever you want to call it. I don't think there's really a word for, and then I think the more, I don't know, the word would be hardcore, or if you're an athlete, your opinion of that's going to be different. Like, to me, an injury means like surgery. At this point in the game, it's like, well, if I don't need surgery, it's not really an injury. that's pretty extreme. For a normal person, that would be different.
Can we take a tangent real quick? I remember when you tore your bicep and you were still squatting with one arm. Like, I think you and I fall along the lines of like, I know I'm doing something every day. To me, it's not normal, even if something bad has happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people, like, they would tear their bicep and they would go sit on the couch for 8 weeks. But you were like, well, 3 limbs still work. I guess I'm good.
Yeah, I tore it on a Saturday. Then I didn't do anything on Sunday, but it was just because I wasn't programmed to. And the next week, I think Monday, I was back to lifting, just trying to see what I could do.
Did you know you tore it as soon as you did it?
Oh yeah,
I remember the video. Like you were flipping a tire in a
Mm-hmm.
team event, and I remember like you looked down at it like, oh shit, and then you're still trying to flip the tire with one arm.
yeah.
You didn't stop.
Well, it was a team event, and Jeff Giosi was my teammate, and he was on the other side, and I remember it went pop, 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 and it exploded, and I look at it, and he said something like, "What are you doing?" And I looked at him, and I said, "I think I tore my bicep," and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I was like processing, and he just started, and I was like, "Oh, well, I guess," and so I just kept trying to lift the tire. I didn't know any, I just knew go. The clock was ticking. And then, but it blew apart. There's a whole story there. I could go into a lot of detail. I could go into a lot of detail about why that happened and all that. But, yeah, I tore it, and I was back in the gym the next week. And then I think I had surgery at the end of that week. And then I probably took that weekend off. And then I think I was back in the gym after the surgery the following week. And I had to be real careful about even just flexing my arm. I remember the doctor said, if you sneeze, don't tense your arm. And but I was back in the gym lifting, and I just didn't. It's their point in stopping for an arm. I mean, I got 2 legs, I got another arm. To me, it's whatever. So, and I took it as an opportunity. Like, well, I remember thinking, well, my squat's going to get really good, and it did, and I got good at a bunch of stuff. I took it as an opportunity to fill in some weaknesses, and then as soon as my arm was able to start handling, because I went to physical therapy and did all the like rehab stuff, and then but as soon as I could start back with my arm doing stuff, I was back at it, and then the emphasis changed from the squats to getting my arms strong again. And that's just how you do it, If you get injured, figure out what you can do. And there, again, we talked about it in the last episode. It's a process. You have to think. You can't just come in. If you're coming in on autopilot and you get injured, you're screwed, right? Because you can't do that. You have to come in. There's going to be an assessment period where you have to come in and go, okay, what can I do? Or I can do this, this, and this, but this hurts really bad. Is it worth it? You have to make these decisions. And if you can come in and do that and use your mind and figure out, well, this is what I'm capable of, and then you have to start developing a plan based on that. And then that plan, something you have to think about is like, because you could very easily tear your bicep and be like, I'm only going to do legs, but then do too much and injure your leg. So you have to think ahead too, like what's too much, and it's a thought process. It really is. And anytime you were injured and I was working with you, I had to make those assessments, which made it a lot easier. I think it's easier looking from the outside in than sometimes doing it yourself. But that's what it is. It's just assessment and figuring it out and figuring out where you can still move.
So how do you take that assessment on? So let's say you're coming in and your knee's been bothering you for a couple of days. Well, knowing you, and I wouldn't do this either, I'm not going to skip squatting. I'm just going to be more mindful of that joint. So how do you approach your assessments and not completely just throw things out?
Okay, so with a knee, if my knee starts hurting out of the blue, like there was no, like, oh, I did a jump squat and all of a sudden, if there was no mechanism for injury, it's just like, oh, my knee's bothering me. I immediately think hamstring curl. Most people's quad is, especially if they're lifting raw, which like CrossFit's all raw lifting. Most of strongman is.
When you say raw, you mean like no no like singlets, nothing that's going to assist you.
Yeah, no
when
squat
you're moving.
suits or
Okay.
deadlift suits or
I don't know if
bench
most people
shirts
who listen to this would understand
Oh, okay, yeah.
what that meant.
I'll say equipped. Equipped. You know, you're wearing some sort of apparatus to assist with the lift.
Okay.
If you're lifting raw, as most people do, just maybe wearing a belt or some sleeves, maybe your quads will usually be stronger than your hamstrings. And the hamstring crosses two joints, so the hamstring should be strong if you're hinging, you're doing swings, deadlifts. So the hamstring will be strong across the hip joint, but most people neglect the hamstring as it crosses the knee joint. So immediately I think I need to do more hamstring curls. So that's a big one. I think hamstring curls are huge for knee health. And we can get into a whole thing. I got a whole protocol for that if you want to get into it later. So that would be number one. But then immediately, because that's not going to fix it in a day, right? I'm not going to do 10 hamstring curls and be like, I'm cured. It's going to be a process. But that day I'll come in and squat and say, okay, my knee hurts. Now my assessment is, well, how can I squat to where it doesn't hurt? If my toes are forward or my toes out, does this stance? I start experimenting immediately. And worst case scenario, maybe I don't do, I call them competition squats, but how you would squat in CrossFit, just, out in the middle of the floor with a bar below parallel. That's like a competition squat, right? Maybe I have to switch to a box squat, or maybe I have to do a Zercher squat or a front squat, or I may have to change the type of squat, but I don't start there. I want to squat. That's what we came, that's programmed, that's what we're planning to do. So I try to make adjustments there. Maybe I have to hold the bar a certain way. Feet angle, knee angle. I'm figuring it out. But if that doesn't work, I'll change the squat. Like, you just figure it out.
You said that it was easier for the coach or the trainer to make those adjustments on the outside. Have you ever had athletes, I know you have because I'm that dumbass, that would come in and they would do the whole workout and they'd be like, hey, my shoulder's been hurting me for like 3 weeks. And you're like, why didn't you tell me 3 weeks ago so I could adjust this and fix it? I guess I want you to clarify how important it is for these athletes who are trusting us to lead them, to notify us when they are having issues, because sometimes we can actually go over and let them understand, like, okay, it's not actually an injury, or it's an imbalance, or maybe we just have to smash out the tissue because it's just a little tight from previous programming. But most of these people don't have the. You're what? You're not 40 yet, are you?
I'm 42.
42. Okay, and you've been doing this since you were like 16. So most people don't have the 25 years of experience that you're still the guy that there's not a lot of things that happen to me right now that I don't understand how to fix because I've already went to you for, but you're the guy that I message first. Like Greg would tell everyone, I go to Devin when I have an injury. I don't go to the doctor. I go to Devin. Well, Devin goes to Mauser. So I think that people forget that they're here for this service and we can help them move better.
I think the experience is key, right? Because injuries, there's so much going on, even in a shoulder, so many muscles, so many ligaments, so many tendons, there's cartilage, there's all this stuff. Any of it could be. And without looking in, like being able to see inside, But if you've had experience in the game, and especially if you've been playing the game hard, you'll have more experience, like you or me. You can see the writing on the wall. If somebody says, I got this slight little pain right here in the very front of my shoulder, you say, I'm going to push my thumb in that. That'll fix it today. Gone.
Actually, yeah, I had a lady. She's been babying her shoulder for a couple of weeks, and we had a PT session. I was like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, you got to help me. It's been killing me. And so I said, well, why didn't you come to me weeks ago whenever this was bothering you? She said, I didn't want to bother you. But I said, okay, well, let's take a look at it. First off, I asked, how did you do it? Scraping something off the floor. It's like, all right, so I understand where the shoulder was at when the injury happened. And I said, what bothers you doing it right now? And we did a couple different tests. And same thing you said. I'm not big on like, I never want to like touch someone's shoulder or anything. I'm very big on letting them do the work. Mm-hmm. And so we we did one stretch. I can't remember what it was. It didn't really do too much. I said, okay, let's try this. So we smashed out. We did the internal rotation smash. So I laid a barbell across, smashed here, got up, 80% of the pain was gone. I said, do you see the importance of just telling me in advance? Because I knew what it was just based off of her telling me what the motion was that she did.
Right.
And I don't think people take into consideration, like whenever I text you and I'll be like, hey, I got this hamstring tendinopathy. Your first question is, what movements are causing that irritation? Because you need to know, is it coming from the QL? Is it coming from the lower hamstring? Is it coming from the psoas? And as I'm saying these names, some people don't even understand what those are. So that's what you're here for. But it's interesting that you say sometimes just putting your thumb into it, that could be the fix. And people don't even realize how simple a fix could be.
Yeah, especially in the early stages, right? If you're like, oh, that kind of, and I can jam my thumb in that shoulder and probably move your arm around a little bit and fix it in one go. But if that's like day 2, that'll probably be pretty quick. But if it's day 35 of you dealing with this, I'm going to have to jam my thumb in your shoulder probably 3-4 days in a row. And then am I going to see you 3 or 4 days in a row? Probably not. And it's going to drag this out a little bit, and you're just making it more difficult, you know. So identifying those sorts of problems early and then telling an expert or somebody with experience, you know, I can't help. There's some stuff I'm like, man, you got to go see somebody, you know. But a lot of times, most of the time, it's just easy little muscle spasm type things that can be fixed within a week or two.
I do have to run fairly soon. So can we run through the main joints and just 2 things that you would recommend for joint health? Things that you think that people should be doing once or twice a week. So, and then maybe let's prioritize it. So for me, I think that lower back is probably the most common thing that you deal with, would you say? It's probably because people sit 8 hours a day.
Yeah, I don't know that the pain is in the lower back. There's a complex there, but yeah, usually there is pain in the lower back, and it could be several different things. But yeah, that's probably the biggest problem area.
So 2 exercises that you recommend for back health once or twice a week.
Reverse hyper. We
got one over here, guys. It's on the rig. If you need help learning how to set it up, ask myself or Matt.
And with any of this stuff, I want to point out, again, this is one of those things you have to think about. But in general, I would say 80% of the time, if you're doing something for just like, hey, I'm just trying to not break my back, okay? 80% of the time, that means pretty light, pretty high reps with a short break.
When you say high reps, like 3 sets of 20 is what we're kind of looking at?
That would be I would say, depending what it is, 10 to 100.
10 to 100.
Sometimes I'll do reverse hyper without the weight, just like throwing my legs up. I'll do a set of 100. I don't do that every day, but, you know, different rep ranges, different stimulus. Sometimes do it without weight. Sometimes do it with weight. Sometimes you want to go a little heavier and just do 10. I would say that's 20% of the time. But 80% of the time, those reps need to be 20, 25, 30, 50, 100. So I'd say reverse hypers, and then I would say regular back extensions. So you can do that in the 45 or off of you got a GHR here somewhere.
Yeah, we got 3 of them back here.
Yeah, those are perfect. Just back extensions. And for the back extension, I say build up to this. Don't do it tomorrow. But if you could do 100 reps every day, and that's as few sets as possible or something like that. Now, you don't want to do so many. You can't do your workout because your back's so pumped up you can't move. But 100 a day is a good goal. If you could just go out and knock out 2 sets of 50 or 4 sets of 25, like your back's going to be pretty strong for most activity. Yeah, I would say those 2 things, reverse hyper and back extension.
What about for shoulder health? Shoulder is another one that's very common.
Shoulder, I'm going to give more than 2 because I'm going to give a generality. Rear delts. Rear delts are usually the problem, big thing for most shoulder issues. So I'm talking rear delt flies, face pulls, anything that's...
We do a ton of pull-aparts.
Pull-aparts. I think
And people are like, so we did 50 the other day in class, and I don't think people were, like when I worked with you, we used to have to do 100 as a finisher,
Mhm.
and they'll be like, oh, 50, but I'm like, it's important, and we do those. We probably do pull aparts like once or twice a week. Honestly, they're programmed in as finishers.
Yeah. It's also a good starter. You just come in and you're not doing nothing. Grab a band, knock out 100. I mean, you're not going to blow yourself out doing pull up. If if that happens, you got bigger problems. But yeah, any rear delt, anything rear delt, face pulls, rear delt flies, any of that stuff is going to solve most. Maybe not solve, but prevent most shoulder issues. Elbows. This is a weird one. I recommend rotations, like get something like a mace or a sledgehammer
Yeah, we got sledgehammer sitting right. Are they right here? Yeah, they're right here in this corner.
with the weight on the outside and just get in this 90-degree angle, rotate, high reps. That a lot of times when you're lifting, especially if you're lifting heavy, or if you're doing something fairly dynamic and moving from, like a muscle up would be a prime example, because you're going from pull to push and you're floating through this position. Now, I'm not a doctor or scientist or anything like that, but you could see where the stuff in here could move. And maybe it's just out of whack a little bit. A chiropractor talks about that stuff all the time. Oh, you're not dislocated, but things aren't where they're supposed to be. This rotational stuff will put all that back. I mean, I'll do it sometimes, and it'll be like crack, 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 pop. And I'm like, what's going on in there? And then I'll be like, man, my elbow feels great. So rotational, and then reverse of the grip, rubber band.
Those iron mind bands, I've given those to a lot of people who had tendonitis, and I don't do them as often as I should. But yeah, we very rarely is anyone really working in this direction. They're always closing, and they wonder what's causing that imbalance.
Yeah, especially if you're doing those pull-ups that you guys do on the rigs, that's a lot of grip. I mean, even if you're just kind of lazily, I know it's not lazy, but it's not an active grip. You're not trying to kill the bar, but your grip is getting murdered, and then nothing's going this way. So those two things are going to fix your wrist and your elbow. You knock out both at the same time. There's a little more I could do there, but I would say start with that. So you done the shoulder, elbow, wrist, back, the knees, hamstring curls. And when I say hamstring curls, again, it's a generality. It's like the rear delts. You can put a band on the top of the rack and lay on the floor and kind of curl them down. You could get I call it a creeper, one of those wheelie things you wheel under cars with. Mm-hmm. Put your feet on that bad boy, especially if the wheels can go any direction. It's hard to keep it in place. And you can bridge up into your hamstring curls.
Guys, we have slides right back there. You see them right there? Those are same thing he's talking about. I've had a few people I've done those with. The other one so when I was getting ready for that 5K, we did a ton of glute ham raises.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you can do those, I mean,
that's one of those things. Doing 5
yeah,
is like max effort.
Yeah, if you can build up to that, if you can do 5 of those, you're probably not going to have any issues. Now I still want to pump that blood in there. Blood is what heals things. That's why I recommend, number one, the high reps cause hypertrophy. So you're going to get bigger muscles. A bigger muscle can take more damage. That's why if you punch a person, you get a different response than if you punch a bear. Okay. Right. So you want a bear's knee, not a person's knee. So we want high reps, but then also blood is what flushes all the stuff that's going to help heal that area. So you're getting 2 birds with 1 stone there. But just any type of single leg hamstring curls, whatever. And again, I follow the rule of 80-20. Most of the time it's going to be high reps, but every now and again, get on that glute ham and knock out those glute ham raises if you're able, and do some heavier ones. Ankles. I really recommend the old school. His name was Dick Hartzell. He invented the jump stretch bands. So every gym's got bands. He invented those. He had a band only gym in Ohio, and he did all these seminars. I think I showed you the seminar where he jumps on the table with one leg and breaks the table.
I haven't seen that.
So he used to go around and he trained collegiate strength coaches and athletes and stuff. And he was real big on ankle injury. He has a whole ankle protocol. If somebody sprains their ankle, he would go out on the field and do this protocol, and they'd play. He could fix their ankle on the spot. A sprained ankle would be fixed on the spot, and they would go play. There's a whole protocol for it. You can find it on YouTube. If you remind me, I'll send you the link to it, and you can share it with everybody if you're able to do that. But he has a famous video where he's up on stage, and he didn't think it was going to be set up the way it was, so he can't hardly show his stuff. And he's like, well, I'm going to stand on this table. And he gets up on this table, and he's like, this is how strong my ankle is. And he would stand on the side of his ankle, on the blade of his foot, and would jump up and down on it to show that his ankle wouldn't sprain or break. Well, he does it on the table, and his leg goes through the table, and the table breaks, and he hits the floor, and he falls over, and he gets up, and he's fine. And he's like, well, I guess this is a better testament than what I was even trying to. So I would recommend his band ankle protocol for ankle stuff. If you don't have a band, just walk around on your toes, honestly. If you can you can do that weighted. It's a great way to warm up anyway. But that band protocol is going to be your biggest bang for your buck for saving your ankles, especially if you're – a lot of people, if they play like a field sport, they sprain their ankle. They're prone to keep spraining it. This will bring you back. It's going to save your ankles. And then I guess that's all the, I mean, you can get into fingers and toes, but I think that's all the neck.
Yeah, CrossFit, we don't do a lot of like rotational strength, and I think that the neck is missed out a lot in CrossFit.
I think for the neck, basic, and I don't, if you're a performing strongman like I am, so you'll see on some of my Instagram videos, maybe I take the neck stuff a little too far, but that's because I'm getting paid to do that. For a normal person or even an athlete or anybody other than an old-time performing strongman, I would say keep your neck stuff. Don't do 80-20. Keep it in the high rep range. The least amount of reps you would ever do would be 10, maybe 20. But neck stuff, you can use a band or a neck harness, or that thing that Joe Rogan's always hyping up. I can't remember the iron neck thing.
Yeah.
I don't have any specific recommendations other than you should work your neck. But you can have a partner push on, and you can push, you can do twists. Once a week, maybe do that. Get some neck stuff in. That's probably the most neglected thing in all of strength training is probably maybe the feet or the neck.
I think, man, we could really dive on the feet too, because you get these people who they only get 3,000 to 4,000 steps a day, and they wonder why they have plantar fasciitis at 35 years old. It's designed to be used, and they're not doing anything for it.
I want to point out something real quick, if you got time.
Yeah.
For injury, this is the most overlooked thing for injury. Okay. An injury, to come back from an injury, you can use different words. You're healing, but you're recovering. You are recovering from an injury. If you have a pain in your shoulder, and you're trying to recover from that. Okay, I'm using that word because I want to associate it with what people know, and we're talking to people that strength train. They use that word for getting their gains and progressing. You're recovering from the workout. If you are not eating enough or sleeping enough, that injury is going to last longer. Most healing occurs while you're asleep. Your growth hormone production, which is big on healing cells and things, all happens at night. Your testosterone, a lot of it, this stuff's going on at night. Sleep is paramount. Your body's going to use all the protein you ate during the day, a lot of it, but a lot of it's also going to be utilized at night. So sleep, and then having enough nutrients and enough calories to heal the injury. A lot of times, if I get injured, I up my calories because I want to heal faster. Your metabolic rate's going to be, especially if it's a massive injury, if you tore a pec or a large muscle, you have to get extra calories to heal that.
When you say extra calories, or anything specific, like more protein, is that really what you look for?
Yeah, more protein. Yeah, but if you're on some kind of budget or something, at the end of the day, calories are going to matter. But yeah, the protein is what you're really after. But there will be a point of diminishing returns, especially you probably don't deal with a lot of like 300 and 400 pound guys. But when you get into that 300 and 400 pound range, if they're already eating 300 grams of protein a day, it's like, well, so they may have to go more on the carbohydrate or fat side. But a normal person, just bump your protein up a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot, but bump it up and maybe look at some, like what you're eating. You don't want a lot of like sugar at that point, things that might boost inflammation. I'm not saying inflammation is bad. If you get all that inflammation out of there, it's actually going to slow the healing process. But you also don't need so much inflammation that you're swelled up like a pumpkin, right? So you want to naturally kind of take some things that might naturally, and then your body will kind of take care of the rest. But yeah, if you're not, here, I got a story. So I ruptured an intestine last year and had a hole in it. And they're like, you're going to have surgery, all this. I was like, no. And they were like, they let me go. And, my guts hurt, right? And eating was kind of shitty, but I did it anyway. And I knew, man, I have to eat to heal this thing. So I'm pounding food, Now, I'm being smart about it. I'm not eating stuff that's going to go through there and like just demolish everything. But I'm eating a lot of food, pounding food. And I go back and they go in and look at it and they're like, yeah, this thing healed. We don't know why. And I'm like, well, how many people would leave and not eat?
Right.
Well, it's not going to heal if you don't give it anything to heal with. You can't build a house without bricks or boards. You have to give it, and it might suck, but you have to give it that. And I did, and it healed. And they're like, it's a miracle.
And it's funny, like it seems like every protocol out there, it's always like, my doctor said I would never walk again, or my doctor said I would never eat more than 600 calories again. My doctor said all I needed to eat was fruits and vegetables for the rest of my life because my guts exploded. And then someone who just understood science and body mechanics was like, actually, no, I just did this thing that really works. Everyone's like, I don't want to go on like some stupid rant, but I honestly, I don't understand how doctors can be doctors sometimes. Like how are you a professional and you're giving this shit advice?
Well, I think part of it is they get jaded. You see, I train an ER doctor, for example, and they'll tell me they'll see 30 to 40 patients in the emergency room every time they work. So, at the end of a month, that's a lot of people, right? Yeah. So you're looking at 1,000 people or something. And let's say out of those 1,000 people, you tell everybody, hey man, you should probably eat right and like maybe, do some exercise. And then 999 of them just look at you like you're the dumbest person you've ever. They're not going to give that advice anymore because only one person out of 1,000 listened. So they just don't give that advice anymore because the feedback isn't what
it's not what the people want, but it's what's necessary. And here's, people want, not everyone, but I'm generalizing. People want a magic pill to fix things most. Yeah, that's the common thing now is, if it's going to take me 3 weeks, but I can take this pill today, I just want to take this pill. But the 3 weeks is going to pass.
Right.
So why not just put in the work and then you don't have to take this magic pill for the rest of your life?
Right.
But the work requires work. It requires force output. It requires you to do something to get the result that you want. Whereas the magic pill, all it requires is for you to drink some water and take a pill. But I think of it as, what if that's not available anymore? What if your insurance stops paying for it? And, like we had to go pick up acid reflux medicine for one of the twins, and it was going to be $113. And then it was free with my insurance. But what if insurance is no longer available? Like,
I can fix that, by the way.
Acid reflux on a 2-month-old?
Oh, I don't know about that. Yeah. But
I
don't know about that. Give a couple years, I'll fix it.
But it's so shocking to me that is the result.
A lot of it also is this, the customer's right, kind of, you have to cater to the customer situation, and you run into that with the insurance and the doctors. Like I said, if the doctor's like, hey, you need to eat right and exercise. And they're like, no. Well, there's this unspoken thing now. It's like, well, now you have to appease them. And it's like, okay, I'll give you this pill. And then the habit just becomes, well, I know they're not going to eat right, so I just give them the pill. But that customer's always right mentality needs to be fixed too, because at some point you should be able to look at a person and be like, I'm not giving you this. You're going to fix this.